Hi, this is Dr. Heidi Hook, and I am here to talk to you about understanding the biochemical pathways to the cytokine storm, to long hauler syndrome, and the viral connection. So, this is really interesting because I think that if we can understand the biochemistry, then we can take some fear out of this unknown. So, I'm going to share my screen because it's so important, I think, when we can actually see the pathways, then we're going to understand it. Um, okay, so here we go. So this is this whole pathway planner. Now, what you see here is when it's red, that's inflammation. Those are cytokines, or those are chemicals in our body that create a lot of inflammation. And all the circles or these ovals are the genetic or enzymes that have a genetic variant. So this is somebody's genetic variant and a genetic pathway planner. And so if it's blue, there's no variances there. If it's green, it's not very many. If it's yellow or orange, there's a lot. And the darker the orange, the more. And then if it's red, then there's even more. It's just orange. So, but the thing is that this IL-6, this is very, very key because this is a huge cytokine that then can produce this cytokine storm. And so all of these arrows that you can see actually promote this inflammation, or if there's a this block here, it lowers this IL-6. It shuts it down. And so if we go around this, we can see vitamin D will shut down the IL-6. And that is why vitamin D is so important in the long haulers. It's so important in any kind of a viral load for your immune system because it shuts down this IL-6, because the IL-6 can then go and create this cytokine storm, which can be very scary. Except if we know how to shut it down, then we have control and we know what to do. So making sure your vitamin D is 50, 60, 70 in a blood test can make a huge difference. Now, what's really interesting to me is there are all of these arrows that point to IL-6, and a lot of people aren't going to understand what this is, but hydrogen peroxide and this thing superoxide are chemicals that our body produces, and they're inflammatory. And our body then has enzymes put in place to break them down. And so we have an enzyme here, this SOD, and superoxide dismutase. And that enzyme helps shut down this, or helps break this superoxide down to actually hydrogen peroxide. And then the catalase enzyme breaks down hydrogen peroxide to water and oxygen. And that's the perfect situation. But if you have a genetic variant like this person does around catalase, this enzyme may not work as well. But you can help bypass that by actually taking catalase enzyme. This catalase enzyme also needs selenium and glutathione to help break down hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is part of our immune system. It is great at killing viruses, but when it's too high, it can promote IL-6. The same with superoxide. There's this SOD enzyme, and you can actually take the superoxide dismutase enzyme. This enzyme needs copper, zinc, and manganese to function. So if you can make sure that you have copper, zinc, and manganese, and you can actually, if you know you have a genetic variant in this SOD or the catalase, you can take it, and you know that then the superoxide is not pushing this IL-6, or this catalase is not pushing IL-6. Now, what I think is really interesting is when we're stressed, we will actually off-gas more hydrogen peroxide. And so there's been a lot of fear in today. And so I think a lot of people run around with this kind of chronic inflammation of this IL-6. And so it doesn't take much more to kind of push people over the top. Now, the other thing that I think is interesting, I'm going to follow this up here. Riboflavin is just B2. and thiamine, B1. These are the activated, and they also shut down IL-6. But when we're chronically stressed, we then can get depleted and use up our B vitamins, because that's the B vitamins are what the adrenal glands use. So making sure you're taking a good multivitamin with good combination of all your B vitamins is really important. Now, homocysteine is another one that is really important. And this is where that whole MTHFR variant can come in, that you need methylfolate, you need methyl B12. So some people have this MTRR variant where they're not able to make methyl B12 to break down homocysteine. And if your homocysteine is over, like the perfect number is 7, but if it's too high, then that is a very inflammatory molecule that can increase IL-6. So taking another good multivitamin that has methylfolate, that has methyl B12, that has good B1, B2, and then your minerals, copper, zinc, manganese, selenium, and glutathione. And you can really support a good portion of this so your body doesn't break down and create more IL-6. Now, the other thing are oxalates. So oxalates are high in spinach and all of the chard and that kind of family of lettuce or vegetables. Now, if we have a leaky gut, then our body can absorb oxalates in. Oxalates are not supposed to be absorbed, they're too big. And if we have a leaky gut because of stress or antibiotics or other things, then the oxalates will get absorbed. And if you have any issues around oxalates, oxalates can push this IL-6. That this is an interesting, the potential mediators and stimulation of IL-6. So if you have too much histamine. Now, what's interesting is superoxide and hydrogen peroxide all push your body's ability to your mast cell, which is what holds histamine, and it releases histamine. And there's 3 pathways that you need to break down histamine. And you need a lot of vitamins. You need B5, you need B1, B3, copper, zinc, and vitamin C to break down histamine. So that's another reason of why we really need all those vitamins. Then angiotensin 2. So angiotensin 2 is over here. And the renin comes in, which is part of our chemicals in our body, promote angiotensin to make angiotensin 2. And then angiotensin 2 comes up to make angiotensin, 1 to make angiotensin 2. And this promotes IL-6. Well, if you have this ACE2 variant, and also this ACE2 variant around bradykinin, this ACE2 is actually in this pathway here, and it supports your angiotensin 1 to go over to this anti-inflammatory angiotensin. So if you have a variant here, then you're going to then promote this angiotensin 2 that comes over and pushes IL-6. Now, what's interesting is that COVID comes in right here and shuts this ACE2 down. So then there's more of a chance to go to this angiotensin. But if your angiotensin 2 is high, there's all these things you can do to shut down the IL-6, so that will have less of an effect. There's also this HMOX, which is another enzyme that helps shut this down. So this person has a variant here, so they're not going to be able to shut down this. And there's things that you can use to take to optimize this HMOX. So I think that's really, really interesting. Also, glutamate. Glutamate is also found in MSG. So all of those preserved, like the Chinese food with added MSG in it, that shuts down this ACE2 and keeps it from coming over to this anti-inflammatory. So another reason to really eat healthy, so you can promote this anti-inflammatory angiotensin. So you have less IL-6. Okay, then so bradykinin also promotes this. And so again, if you have this glutamate or you have ACE2 inhibitors, then you're going to have more bradykinin. And you can break bradykinin down with like lumbrokinase and some of those enzymes. Let's see, let's look. So if you have too much sugar, so that's high sugar, it can promote IL-6, high homocysteine, we talked about that, oxalates, we talked about that, hydrogen peroxide, we talked about that. And then here's where the viruses come in. Viruses actually promote that IL-6 and anxiety. So if we're stressing about wearing masks, not wearing masks, getting the vaccine, not getting the vaccine, social distancing, being alone, all what's going to happen in the future, it all promotes anxiety, which promotes IL-6 and inflammation. So my favorite thing is to have people take 5-HTP, which is a precursor to serotonin, and serotonin is the main calming neurotransmitter that gets depleted in stress. And so we really need to be able to vibrate with love and joy and, like listen to what's going out in the world or what's going on in the world, but also be able to come back to feeling peaceful. And 5-HTP and also magnesium can be really helpful because magnesium helps your body break down epinephrine, which is adrenaline that gets pushed in these stressful times. So the other thing that I think is so interesting in this pathway, these are some environmental stimulation of IL-6. So molds and mycotoxins. So if you're in a moldy house or and that might one be thing that is, in the rainy seasons when there's more mold, that can make people more susceptible. Lyme's disease or lipopolysaccharides. So lipopolysaccharides is a chemical that is released by gram-negative bacteria. So maybe some imbalanced bacteria in your gut, and that can then lead to IL-6. And then look at this, EMFs. So all of those electromagnetic frequencies, so all the 5G and your cell phones and your computers, all stimulate IL-6. Air pollution. So in the cities where the air pollution is worse, or in the summers when we have a lot of smoke and smoking, all promote IL-6. Now this is one makes me really sad, which is sodium sulfate or coffee. Coffee is, so many people drink coffee to keep going because we're stressed and we're tired, but that also can promote IL-6. And then heavy metals, lead, mercury, aluminum. Now look at this, glyphosates. So all of the Monsanto, the Roundup, the glyphosates that are used on non-organic foods promote IL-6 and omega-6s. So this is the canola oil. So canola oil is a very inflammatory oil, and it's in a lot of those Impossible meat, the Beyond Burger, all of those artificial meats that they're really starting to push is high in canola oil. Pesticides, and then any mTOR stimulation, which is too much methylfolate, too much iron. That's a big long list. But even if we just do these and we limit these, that can and do our vitamin D and our B1 and our B2 and our minerals and our methylfolate, methyl B12 in small doses to lower homocysteine, we can have a huge impact on IL-6. Now let's follow this over here. Potential IL-6 inhibition. So doing hydrogen water, there's a product out where you just drop this little pellet in water and it creates hydrogen water. That hydrogen water actually kind of helps bind up this hydroxy radical if you're not able to break down your hydrogen peroxide, but it also shuts down IL-6. And then again, we talked about thiamine and riboflavin. Then black cumin seed oil is something else. And then apigen, which is in parsley and chamomile. So having a lot of parsley on your food, drinking chamomile tea can be great to shut down this IL-6. And then other herbs, pine bark, oxytocin. So oxytocin is what our body produces when we see a smiling face, when we get a hug, when we are feeling loved. So oxytocin is important for increasing or decreasing IL-6. and then pulse electromagnetic frequencies, vitamin D, omega 3s, selenium, really controlling your blood sugar, healthy weight and moderate exercise, not over exercising. So this is what I go through with people. And what happens is when you get a virus, right? A virus pushes this and it can start using up all your nutrients. And then sometimes the um, the it can create more histamine. Histamine pushes IL-6, which uses up more nutrients, and you're on this pathway. Now, what's interesting is the spike protein in that is being made now impacts this ACE2. And that's where that COVID comes in, and it impacts that ACE2. So then it produces this inflammation and uses up our nutrients. And I think that's what's really happening with long haulers is they just get stuck in this pathway. And so there's everything you can do. You shouldn't be afraid of these viruses because there's everything you can do. It's really about repleting your nutrients. And I've seen a few people post COVID that had a hard time and their nutrients were very depleted. And so I think there's everything you can do to build this back up so your body can reach normalcy again. So that is my hope that we can learn what our body and just the simple biochemistry and learn what we can do to optimize so we don't have to be afraid of any virus coming in. There's so many antivirals out there that are very helpful. One is just making sure you have all the nutrients your body needs to balance this, but also, high dose vitamin C. Ozone therapy is incredible. And then there's three major medicines out there that are really cheap. One starts with an I, one starts with an H, one starts with a B. And they are phenomenally effective and cheap. And we really need to look at alternative ways of staying healthy, even if we get the virus or we don't get the virus. Um, okay, so knowledge is power. And I'm hoping that people can understand what's going on here and what we can do. It's not this mystery thing that happens. And if you really understand the biochemistry, then you know what to do. And it is not a mystery and it's nothing that we need to fear. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. And